Caps is actually maybe one of the most overrated Western players, but just players in general.
Okay. Right, this is going to be another episode of Hot Take Point Made, League of Legends edition. Shout out to everyone who's a subscriber and picked Hot Take Point Made League of Legends edition when you subscribe, so these boys get something extra. So we will start. Obviously, Keire's job on this show is to just say mad shit. So what mad shit have you got to say this week? What's the crack, as they say?
I've got some crack for y'all. Got some,
okay,
I'm
it's not necessarily what it means, sorry.
I know, I'm going to try and tell you some.
Okay.
So it's a little bit on theme. I'm not really going to touch the tangential shit as is, but basically, whilst I was on my holidays, I was spending it in a well good time. I was talking to some fellow League of Legends enjoyers, and then when I came back from my holidays, I was watching some old historical stuff, and basically, I've come to the conclusion Caps is actually maybe one of the most overrated Western players, but just players in general.
Okay.
And I don't even have him in the top 30 players in League of Legends history anymore. And I don't even think he's in the 30. Top 10. Top 30, yeah, 30. I don't think he's in the top 30 anymore. And I'm not going to give you the 30 list. I'll put it in the comments, right? Okay. But I also don't think he's a top 10 mid of all time. Now, there's some obvious ones, but the people that I've actually got above them, who are towards the bottom, are all your Xiaohu, Scout, Doinbees, BDD, and I think he's fighting for position 11/10 with Zeka, whatever the fuck you want to call him, right? And let me just kind of go through why a lot of this comes around. So take for example, Caps obviously, unfortunately, plays in Europe. And so, the standard of, European League of Legends across the years has, aggregated. Now, he did probably play during all, the best periods, and he has led a lot of the best periods. But, think about this. If you took, how long Caps has played with the relative best players of his region, that would be, Doinby playing with, The Shy, Kanave, Uzi, and Ming for 6 years.
I see that.
Right? So here's the problem, right? No one else on that list, apart from maybe Chove, Knight, and certain eras of Faker, really got to do that in any way, shape, or form, right? Now, obviously, his all-time great players aren't as good as theirs, but the problem is his achievements aren't even remotely comparable. Also, what people need to understand about winning Western splits, EU splits, is you have to look at the best team you beat to win it. If you actually kind of look at it, every year of Caps' career, had he played, he probably would only have won 1 or 2 LCKs ever on the teams that he was on relative to the period, right?
Okay.
And the teams that he was losing to, put it this way, if BLG played in EU the entire time Caps was there, he would have none. You know what I mean? He'd just have 0 EU, or if T1 was there, basically almost have 0. He maybe back in the day, the 2018, 2019. The other thing is, and this is something I realised, Caps' actual peak periods are so short. They're really, really, really short. It's a playoffs or a couple of key games of at the end of a playoff. His best period is mid lane for Fnatic, but then at Worlds he's not even that good. And then at that Worlds, Perks is actually better than him by a lot, by the way. I always used to say Perks was better than him at that Worlds. Perks is way better than him at that Worlds. It's not even funny. Obviously, it doesn't help that the fucking final's an absolute blowout. And yeah, so I was just kind of going through it all. And here's the other thing. Of all the all-time great players, and all the other superstar players, I have never seen someone who got to play second fiddle to someone else as much as Caps. I know Caps is a very high variance players, but the actual primo solo carry Caps, he's a very, very very short window. Basically, it was the time he had Targamas and Flackhead in his bot lane. But even then, Yankos was still really, really good in that period, and that's probably his best solo hard carry period. Now, obviously, certain things that go in his favour is he just gets to go to all the MSIs and all the worlds. But And that's where it kind of gets weird, because people like Doinby had to try and beat like the second or third or the best team in the world to try to go to MSI. So Caps just kind of gets to appear at all of them, and there's loads of them. He actually doesn't really do anything. He just kind of goes, has a close game against an Eastern team, and then like leaves the tournament. Obviously, the recent one was a bit better. So I actually think relative to like how the concentration of players that he's played with and the expectation of the players he's played with, his career in terms of being like a primary carry and an all-time great player is actually kind of getting a bit overrated.
Okay. By the way, this is the area where if you are you, Zaboutine, you may as well just let loose on this show, because the career damage that just sitting next to Keire while he says all this mad slander of all the goats is wild. So hit me with it. What do you think of this take? It's wild, isn't it?
I genuinely like it. I think it's a really good take, because I personally think there is few players in the history of League that like there is a very big misrepresentation of what they are as a player. Like for me, my personal pet peeve in terms of overrated is always Mab. Because it's like the guy that was supposed to play everything in every single matchup, and every time it really counted, didn't win any side of any matchup against other players. I think he was part of something that was bigger, and everybody wanted a face for the Rock Tigers. But I mean, I made the list while Keire was making his argument, and I mean, I think it's hard. The only thing I don't like is counting top 30 all time for all type of players, because I think he belongs to the top 30 players of all time. Well, how to say that? It's like if we make a top 30 mid laner list of all time, he surely belongs to it, right?
Yeah.
But it's for me very hard to compare an ADC or a jungler, especially in a game that changes.
Yes.
But top 10 mids, then you start right like going on the list. So I was like Faker, Chovy, Showmaker. I think Pound deserves more. Xiao, BDD, Rookie, Crown, Scout, Doinby, Knight. I'm already at 12 or at 11. And that's it. He's not part of it. Because I feel like what people really don't remember about Caps is whenever he feels like the team is going to lose, he's overplaying. And by nature of the level comparison between Asia and Europe, his team is always set to lose mostly. So whenever the level rises, you see him like in with Sylas quite a lot. I've seen him like, I think my most vivid memory of him is facing Showmaker and just kind of throwing the game away by trying to win plays that don't even need to happen. And that was, I think, 2020 when Damwon was very strong and they kind of ascended. And that's the thing is, I think that he started stronger than Showmaker. And you've seen in a span of 2 years, Showmaker ascend way beyond what he was capable of producing. And it's not that he's peak. Some games, Caps plays as the best player in the world. I have even memories of this year, like few games on Ahri, where I don't see, like the only few players I can recall playing that well on Ahri are probably like Chovy and Knight. So his peaks are absolutely insane. But they're like oasis in the desert. Like it's here and there, sporadically you see a game and you're like, oh, Caps is back. But the truth is, I think that being deserving to be the top 10 is a mix of high ceiling, extremely high floor, extremely high ceiling, and consistency. I think he only has the high ceiling. He has a pretty low floor, and consistency is not really there yet. He's not there at all because it's been years he's playing. And if you really look over the roster he's been playing with, he has been the secondary carry quite a lot, and it's always been good for his teammates. Whereas I think a lot of players have had to be the main carry in their team. So if you pair all these parameters together, right, and you assemble the puzzle, I don't think he deserves to be in the top 10. I do think it's kind of a Smeb effect or a Bjergsen effect or a, I don't know, double ETH effect where extreme local domination. But if we go by these metrics, I do feel like Mapro should take his spot. If we take someone from a minor region that has made waves internationally in a consistent manner and has shown top level ceiling, I do believe that Maple has a better record than Caps, and then Caps comes second, and then probably Bjergsen comes third, or Jensen comes third probably, maybe even Perks as a mid laner. But I'd say I think this is a story that everybody wants to be told that way. Therefore, it will be told that way, because sometimes I feel like the crowd really thrive for collective amnesia in a way to elevate someone. And I think that's, so I agree with the take. I kind of agree with the take. It's spicy, but I think it's a good take.
Here's the problem. It is a crazy ass hot take because one, you're basically counter-signaling the Hall of Legends. And I think he might even, because KC's going to like tear each other apart with votes, I think he's actually just going to win MVP of this split because they want to give it to Caps when they can anyway. Skumon's been a bit shit. And actually, I think in KC, I think Canna, fucking Callista and Keire are all going to take votes from each other. So I actually think he's even going to be the MVP of this split of LEC all these years into his career. So to a fan, it's going to be a blasphemous take because he's the GOAT, which he is. But here's the problem. I agree because here's why. First of all, if you just run down the list of the names, there are names that are on there that a fan who's a Westerner will go, Zeka, fucking Zhao, like, brother, these guys were number 1A option who smurfed like a whole world, who like carried in MSI. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, I actually agree with Keire. It's something I looked up years ago to do an article about like Western players that had insane runs against Asians. I was shocked at that time. I did it in 2024. How few times Caps actually just carried the whole game? Like, often what he did actually, like you guys are saying, was he was actually amazing at sometimes being the second option. Like, he had times when he was the best, and certainly with some of the modern day G2s where he had to be the best player. But as you've seen when Skumon's been excellent, or Hansama, or Yankos, or Perks when he was there, there's been other people have been allowed to carry, and then he was just a very good player. I actually think the underrated thing about Caps is, I agree, all the flair comes from, like, all the hype comes from his ceiling. If he ever hits the ceiling, he's probably the most mechanically talented Western player. I could give you that. But I actually think generally it's more like his floor's pretty good. He tends not to actually dip down. The whole like claps or craps. The craps thing went away after like 3 years or something. If anything after that, it was more that he did the classic veteran move. He might just be a bit boring and just do have an all right game on Orianna and not lose the game. And, you know, then you just blame the top laner of the ADC or whatever. So I actually think if you make the list of names, what people are, that's why I thought Keire actually took a really interesting angle, which is one, Caps' resume is boosted because he not only was playing in a lesser region, he's had super teams endlessly just rammed into him over and over and over. Remember, he's even outlasted Fnatic getting super team players. Like, it's just his one team the whole time, basically. Then also, as he pointed out, if you were to put him and make him Korean or Chinese tomorrow, and he has to play in the LPL or the LCK, even if he's like equally as skilled, would he really have that many more titles than Zeka, who, by the way, has completed League of Legends by that logic? Would he have more than, like, fucking Scout, who was, like, a multiple-time MVP, won Worlds? You know what? What we're doing is we're underestimating, in the same way as we're overrating his accomplishments and Bjergsen back in the day in LCS and Doublelift, we're also underrating people who were insane only for a year or two, but aside from that, had a long career of, like, 4 or 5 years where they're a good player. Like, I'll tell you the obvious examples of players now I think would get underrated. I think, actually, if you ask a Western fan, they would say that Caps is better than Showmaker. And it's like, mate, I'm not even known as a Showmaker fan, but peak Showmaker was like contender for best player in the world. Caps was never for 1 second in his life contender for best player in the world. I even think Keire is right. People mistake as well. Caps never even did the thing where for 6 months you cook. It's more like, you know, he'd have a monthly cook, so he'd have a playoffs. I agree with you. Yeah, by the way, he's had plenty of regular seasons where he's just kind of formed the first half of it in, and then just got his arse in gear, like on the Expect SOS style, where you get it together for playoffs because you're always in playoffs. You don't care if you come in as 4th or 15th. If anything, you terrorise some top team when you do that. And at the end, who gives a fuck? I won anyway. No one cares about week 3 of LEC. So I've always thought tournament formats suck because the reason why leagues work in football is there's no fucking playoffs. That way every match matters in the league. Like, I can tell you as a Liverpool fan, it's a bummer when you get that 1-1 draw against Spurs and you know, right, well, fuck, Man City wins that game, so we've lost the league already 8 weeks into the league. That sucks. In fucking LEC, by this analogy, like, Caps wouldn't have almost no fucking titles, would he? Like, how many times did they come 2nd or 3rd and then just win the playoffs? Like, in a league, that wouldn't happen. So I actually think he did a fair job at doing the example of what if he was over here, what if he was over there, because we have to understand, I also think the Maple comparison is really fair. You ask some Westerner, so is Maple better than Zeka and Zhao, because he got all those elements? They'd go, who gives a fuck about the LMS? And then who gives a fuck about the LEC, you clown? Remember, half the time he was beating, like, fucking my boy Larson and a bunch of chokers, Humanoid and Razork, keep going, Nemesis and fucking Brox. What are we talking about? Again, he wasn't clapping fucking, remember, when Zeka wins some of his titles, he's beating Prime Chovy, he's beating fucking Faker and T1 in World. These are pretty good names. You don't even have to be a Zeka fan or a Showmaker fan. These are pretty insane players he's beating. Like, these are all-timers, boys. So I'm with you, even though it's sad, because look, you know what, Keire? Even I have the sentiment of like, oh, that can't be right. How are you talking shit on the king? That's caps, bro. But I know what you mean. This is why, unfortunately, that top 20 players at Worlds list, just bring it back, right? It's the only way we can bullshit ourselves that like fucking Doublelift was top 20 that year or whatever. Like, we just need to lie to ourselves. It's the lie we need to believe to give ourselves hope and get through the night, because otherwise we would wake up and go, shit, we're just European LMS, aren't we? Like, who gives a shit about our league? We have to pretend it's awesome. Like, it's why I always say I don't blame Callista's Hall for thinking he's top 10 in the world. You just don't play him every week, mate. If you played him every week, I think I'd still think you'd be good, but you'd just be humbled a little bit, you know. You'd realise that there's some guy that you don't even think is that good, who's like the 5th best LPL ADC. He might just give you work every week, mate. You might go, fuck, I didn't even know it went that deep. Okay. You're thinking it's just the people at Worlds and MSI, isn't though? So I like that. I like that. That's a pretty spicy take. Yeah. What's good actually about a Keire take is you think it's just coming in, spicy little hot take, but actually it's sustaining, isn't it? There's substance there. It's a complete meal, a bit like Huel. Because did you know, Huel isn't just like, you know, a shake you have to go with food. It's actually a complete meal in itself. Like that one that Keire is holding up there, that is the RTD bottle, and that is the grab and go version, which has 35 grams of protein, 7 grams of fiber, and is under $5 a meal. You can also get the Black Edition powder, which is 40 grams of protein, mixes with water or milk in about 30 seconds. It's a complete meal you have instead of food, not something to have on top or with food. I have actually had it as lunch. It did last me many hours, and I was able to then wait until my evening meal. Obviously, I'm someone who does a lot of shows, so sometimes I have limited time to cook, to order, to get things ready, to have ingredients. Also, if I get some ingredients, it's going to be some leftover takeaway from yesterday. I'm not going to check my nutritional profile or that. That's all taken care of. They've got everything in there because it has 27 essential minerals and vitamins, no artificial sweeteners, colours or flavours, and you can get 15% off online if you are a new customer. So why not get a complete meal in this sense? Also, it tastes good. I tried the banana strawberry one. I think it banana chocolate, is it? I think it's banana chocolate. That was quite a good flavour. It tasted quite nice. Yeah. So, limited time offer. Make healthy eating simple. Get Huel today with my exclusive offer of 15% off online with my code LFN at huel.com/LFN. That's HUEL. New customers only. Thank you to Huel for partnering and sponsoring our show. So, we will now move on. Zaboutine, what is your take?
So I can frame it in a mildly spicy one or an extremely spicy one. So
the latter. Listen, that's never even a question on this show. Always maximum Schofield level, all the way up. Boys.
Okay, I do believe this is my most irrational take so far.
Lock in, boys.
You ready? EU is winning Worlds this year.
What the fuck are you talking about, sir? Sir.
Okay. That is the premise, right?
Why? What? By the way, okay. One second before you even go. When you say that, do you actually mean KC? Is that really the take?
I mean either KC or G2.
Oh, it can be either. Okay, right. It's not even just a bias angle. Okay.
No. I
was like, is there a god off camera with like Kometo, like say the fucking line on camera? If you're gonna do a show, you have to say this line. Go on. Why are they winning Worlds? Come on, hit me.
I'm not advocating for any of these teams. Okay. I'm trying to look at.
This is actually the madness take ever. You've done all the ridiculous Keire takes and everything. I know.
So I'm just looking at the state of LCK and the state of, because when you want to look at Worlds, it's basically how good LCK plays.
Yeah.
How many contenders there is from the LPL. That's it, right?
Okay.
And then you have the outliers that can be the it's not the LMS, but the I don't even know LCP.
Yeah.
But I don't think LCP is since CFO and NA is decent, but I think the ceiling.
They're not winning Worlds, are they? Come on,
right?
Come on. Yeah, exactly.
So what I'm looking at is occurrences throughout the year and whether there are anomalies, right? So I tend to disagree a little bit with Perks on the fact that they were flukes. Even though they happened earlier in the year, because I don't think that the combined happenings of G2 beating Gen.G and even BFX, which was a good team, I think, earlier this year, or KC being able to go to the final against Damwon at the EWC are fluke. Maybe isolated they are, but combined they can be actually a little bit more relevant. And then I look at the skill discrepancy between the top teams in Korea. And we are in a year where KT can eliminate T1.
Yeah, true.
Gen.G can go out. Hanwha can go out. There is 3 spots. There is 5 teams. They all beat each other every week, and no one looks perfect. Yep. You have days where KT looks like shit. You have days where Hanwha looks unbeatable. And then the next day, Gen.G looks like immense, and the next match Rudolph just drops a massive stinker. I think on the other end, if you look at LPL, there are problems. It's just the time. I still believe like the favorite for Worlds is BLG. In personally, that's a call that I made earlier in this year. I just like the profile of Flandre, and I think it just balances so well when you're in a tournament setting and you have a weak side or top laner that can take pressure, pick anything, and then you have Viper that can pick anything. But all in all, I do think that we are pretty much in the same state as 2015, where we have two teams in Europe that actually play good League of Legends. Everybody else is absolute horseshit. Let's be real. Like, I watch LEC every week. It's a nightmare. But KC and G2 play good League of Legends. They're able to beat top teams. The drafts and the Swiss stage is very chaotic. And there is always a world where BLG gets eliminated by TS who fumbles later. I think this is... So that was my take. My take would be, since 2015, this year is the highest chance that an EU team can win Worlds, because I believe 2015 was the highest chance we had in comparison to what the Korean teams were able to show. And since no Korean teams ascends, shows dominance, and most of the team, if you watch the games in LTK, it's not clean League of Legends. It's not like one team is playing perfect and all the others are like just worse. It's every team has a good day and a bad day. And in that specific setting, with two EU teams that are very different, that have very good players, it just requires a good draft to actually get the momentum and go to the finals, and then it's one BO. So this year, EU is winning Worlds.
Okay, I've got one thing to add on to this, Zaboutine. Because of the historic matchups of NA, does that mean also NA can win Worlds? Because
no. There is no transitivity in sports, right? It's just, it's not because NA beats EU. It's like, if we face NA and we lose, fuck it. I just failed my take. I just feel like if the draw is decent enough, for instance, BLG gets out by TS, then quarterfinal KC beats TS because TS is always bad in playoffs at like international tournaments suddenly. Then they go in semis and somehow T1 got eliminated, stayed in Korea. And then you have KT Roadster arriving in semifinals. KT Roadster's no Rocks Tiger. They can shit the bed in semifinals because they're playing in front of a crowd and one of their players bad, and suddenly KC's in final. Or G2, you can replace one by the other. But I do think that we have two powerhouse teams that can play at the level of Korean teams this year, and at the same time, the Korean teams, while being better, have flaws, and the top LPL teams as well, which has never happened in the last 10 years.
Like, here's the thing. I'm someone who has always held hands on like the West's like chances, and particularly during certain periods where folk just kind of like do the somewhat like LS thing of assigning that just any version of any LCK team will always beat any version of like a Western team, regardless of like the period of time. And I do agree that LCK, and particularly the LPL is really bad right now. Like, oh my god, is it fucking bad? It's pretty crumbs, right? And the LCK is kind of I think Gen.G just not being so predominant and basically like Thanos snapping the region is kind of like, it's made it more exciting, but the quality is like a lot down. The only thing, right? So the one thing, I have like two like things to say on this take. Only thing that scares me is I think both teams match up into T1 just long term isn't that good unless it specifically is top carries at Worlds. Like that's like my one problem. Like because like under the idea that like T1 is at Worlds, and then you've got to try and beat them at Worlds with like the Worlds buff of T1, right? And then also if it's not a top lane matchup, as in like specifically like Thorin and like locked in, no lane swaps, like etc. Like that's where it gets hard for me, because like who is it that like, I'm not saying T1 are going to win Worlds, but if it's one of the EU teams, who is it that puts out T1, or are you just kind of hoping you like don't draw them? And then the second one for me is like, I actually think it's like better for us once we get to the BO5, but I actually think it's like the group stage, because it's Swiss, is like the not the hard part, but like I feel like we lose like G2 or KC like before we even get, you know what I mean, one of them before we get to like Swiss. And that's like, if both of them go at, it's not that I think there's, put it this way, I think if both of them make it, I think the chances are like 25% Zaboutine. But I think if only one of them makes it, I think the chances are like 5. You know what I mean? As in, like, I don't think it's like, I think it's multiplicative, not additive, in terms of like how well it like does. And the other thing that could be really fucking suck for them is if they draw into each other like early on, you know what I mean? Like, that's the other thing that could be a bit like shit. But yeah, I actually kind of agree in the sense of like, that if you're going to like do it, like this is the time to like turbo like lock in, because you're never. I don't think the LCK will ever be as bad as they are like right now. I think loads of these teams are going to strip themselves for parts. And for the next like off season, there's going to be probably a big massive Korean shuffle. I don't think many of these teams will stay together. I think this is like a big window. I don't think they will win Worlds. I think BLG are still massively favoured. I think Gen.G, you know what I mean, are still like not favoured because, you know what I mean, they've got their own Worlds debuff. I think HLE could be really, really spiky at Worlds, and then T1 have just got the narrative superpower. But I don't think they're as bad as what I think a lot of people would assign based on name value.
Here's the problem. It is a really good hot take because it might be the spiciest hot take ever said on the show in theory, because it's absurd, isn't it? Like, no chances EU are ever really... Like, people forget, I always will mention this, even though I think it's bullshit how FPX won that Worlds, G2 also shouldn't even have been in the final. They should have lost either of the Korean teams before that, and then it even should have been there. In fact, maybe it would have even been IG versus T1 or something. We could have had the classic fucking rookie versus faker that we're all denied. So that's one of those ones where people do that convenient thing they always do in sports. Like, I can tell you in Counter-Strike, I know a million fucking legendary pros that go, oh, and then I only lost this game because he hit like a lucky deagle shot. And I'm like, bro, if we go back through the demo, there's some round earlier on where you did some bullshit and then you fucking won that round too. Like, shut the fuck up. You don't just get to pick your moment. You have to assess the overall thing. Here's why I don't agree though, hence why it's a massive hot take. Because here's the problem. There is a logic to how you're doing it, which goes like this. The number one team, especially as because right now, by the way, we don't even know if Bin will play for BLG. Maybe even BLG's weaker than they were at their peak when they were at first stand. You could argue the absolute top peak as of this moment is lower than it's ever been in League, because you always had either an all-time great dominant team, Gen.G, whatever it might be, Faker, T1, or you had like 2 or 3 killers. Whereas at the moment, yeah, you're right. The LPL, by the way, is a joke. BLG, even with Wembo, still won nearly all the games and weren't even challenged that much. All the other teams have shit the bed. TS lost today to fucking like LGD or some absurd. Like, there's some outrageous ones that people have lost. So LPL's on sort of fumes right now. The problem is the LCK one. Here's why I don't agree. Because actually, the danger of the LCK is they might send 4 teams that are all dark horses to win Worlds, which I don't think's ever happened in the history of League of Legends. So here's the real problem. This is why, if you... answer Keire's problem, this says nothing about whether NA can win, because NA at the moment can only beat EU. So, okay, hey, congratulations, NA, you beat G2, or KC. Now, how do you do against the LCK? Oh, they still push your shit in like every single fucking time. And the LPL, forget about it. They smash you, bro. BLG's not losing a lie in gaming. I don't care what you say. So LCS can't, but that's also why I think LEC can't. Because realistically, even with the best draw in the fucking universe, you're probably going to have to beat 2 of these teams in BO5s. My problem is this. Maybe you can beat 1. Maybe you can get the right match. By the way, maybe you can get T1. I think T1's even a beatable one right now, actually. Maybe you can get T1. Maybe you can get D+. These are beatable teams on paper. But if you have to beat one of T1 and D+, then one of Hannibal Life and Gen.G, I just don't think you do it, bro. Like, I wouldn't put my money on that side of the equation. And I do think even though the top level is a bit weaker, here's the one last thing I'll say. I'll tell you another area where we've all lived in delusion in the West. Why do we act like all the Western teams don't choke at Worlds playoffs? They do. All of them do. Every single one. Even if they have a good series early on in the playoffs, you get them to the big semi or to the final. We don't just lose. We get 3-0'd, boys. We get like clapped out of the server. Like, you might not like how some teams lose. I'll give an example. When fucking Hannibal Life lost to Gen.G in the round of 8 this last Worlds, right? Viper didn't fucking choke, bro. He was carrying his tits off. He just couldn't win the game. Like, other players had problems. We're just ignoring that because of first stand, with G2 this time, because of the MSI results, still weren't in the final, by the way, and because of that MSI in 2019, we're all acting like we've solved the international problem. At Worlds, we never have, bro. Those Worlds playoffs, once you get that BO5 and you know it's single a limb, people just get scared, mate. Even people like Caps just have average performances. Like, how many times have you ever seen that, by the way? the way. Caps has been in playoffs once. How many times has he ever 1v9 to fucking playoff series in the Worlds? I'd ask you, maybe that one against Gen.G in 2020, that's about it. The Silas one, that's about it. I think aside from that, he never done it. As Keire said. By the way, on Fnatic, he was carried by Reckless. And then on the other one, I actually think Perks was this solo carrying Jankos was unbelievable. So I even think actually we're overrating the best Western teams ever. So I love the take. It's a mega hot take. I just don't agree at all. I do not agree at all on that one. Absolute nonsense. Absolute fucking nonsense. But definitely a hot take. And it wasn't even just some crazy case he hasn't lost in LEC. Fuck it. They made it EWC. They can win it all. It wasn't even somebody even put G2 in the mix there. I'll tell you the one last thing though. Here's the nightmare fuel for you, Zaboutine. Part of me wishes your take does come true, but for the reason that you secretly want the least to happen. It comes true because Perks is just the fucking the bard. He's just weaving a tale of what can happen.
You're assuming I don't want it to happen. I doubt it will happen, but if I do happen, he will get all my respect.
Okay. No, but here's the problem. The reason why
I don't have an agenda against Perks.
No, but I'll tell you right now, the reason why you and Peter Dunn both think it won't work is very logical, which is Perks has none of the qualities of a coach right now. But the problem is, I also think he has the only team where he's not required to do any of those things. He's only required to do this bullshit, weave me a magical tale and tell me the fucking halftime story or some shit,
I wish it. I'd love to see Caps win his first Worlds, coached by Perks. I think the storyline is perfect.
Pretty sweet. I would as well. Because you have to understand who I am. I would just go, yeah, well, what's new? Caps guy, carried by Perks most of his career. And what would you even say, haters? What would you even say exactly? Exactly, brother. Anyway, obviously, sports season never ends, does it? Because all the sports go throughout the year. Wait there 1 second. And that applies to our sponsor, Prize Picks, because right now there's all sorts of sports. You watch women's basketball in America. The NBA will be starting up again soon. If you don't know, LeBron's gone to the 76ers on some cheap contract. They've got an all-star team of players. He's got to have a last run there. You've got, obviously, football will be coming back in a month or two. They're already doing the pre-gate season stuff. The American football will come back soon enough as well with all those last chance rosters and the newer people coming along. There's so many different angles you can take. I have to say, in general, I've never cared about women's basketball, but I actually do sometimes watch the highlights of that Caitlin Clark woman. I like shooters. She's actually pretty good. She actually got kind of a cool game to her. And the cool thing about Prize Picks is it's really easy. All you do is you just pick more or less on 2 to 6 stats projections. So if it was a Caitlin Clark one, it's will she make more than 3 3-pointers in this game? All you do is have a look at her form, think about what you saw in the last match. Is it more or less? It's quite simple. You don't have to pick a number. You're just doing more or less. And then if that comes in, it comes in. Also, you can actually do their official partner of the NBA now also, and they have a million different angles that work for this one, which is you can do the early cash out where when your player starts hot, the game doesn't even have to finish or necessarily even win. You can sometimes cash out. It's so easy to do. You can do it in loads of states in the USA. And of course, we have a little deal for you, which is if you go and download the app today and use code HOTTAKELOL, all one word, you can get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. So you download the app today, use code HOTTAKELOL to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Okay, shout out to Prize Picks. So we have now got the last take, which I'm going to drop off this one and do a fan take. The fan take, so obviously if you're an Elephants premium subscriber, it's $9 a month, or if you do for the whole year, $7.50 a month, 7-day money-back guarantee. You get all the shows ad-free, including all the extra content that goes behind the paywall. Like we're going to, after this one, do a little Q&A that'll be exclusive. This topic right now is from a subscriber, so we'll read out their alias. The alias is Syntax. By the way, we also need people to submit hot takes and to submit questions for the Q&A. So if you go into the channels on the Discord, make sure you say it's for Hot Take Point Made League of Legends. And when you subscribe, you can pick who you subscribe to. Why not pick Hot Take Point Made League of Legends and hear more crazy takes? The take is, it's actually quite a good segue from the Western one. Listen, boys. Syntax says, Gen.G actually has a better chance of winning Worlds this year than they did in previous years, even when they were the favourites. In previous years, the expectation to win was enormous, which came with a lot more pressure. This year, despite looking weaker overall than they have in recent years, the expectations are lower, and I think that works in their favour. Their ceiling is still incredibly high. If either the bot lane or Canyon steps up and peaks at the right time, I think they have everything they need to contend for the title. Thoughts, gentlemen?
I just want to tackle to open with some, because I think there is a logical flow that happens a lot with people, which is they misunderstand the difference between opposite and difference, right? They mean they've lost, and because you put like they were good and they lost, they're not that good, meaning they are different. So the opposite should happen,
Right?
And they don't understand that it is just it's just part of a different spectrum of things. They can be eliminated in groups because they're not that good.
Yeah.
They can go into quarters. They can go to the finals against 3-0 because it's the first time Chovy goes to final and chokes. There is a whole universe of possibilities, but I think people do a lot of, oh, this happened and then had that happen. And so if this doesn't happen, the opposite of that will happen, which is like such a huge shortcut, right? And so we can go into the nitty gritty of the take, but I just wanted to start with that because I feel like it is always very hard to get a good hot take if it's just, oh, it's different, therefore this time they're gonna win.
So there's one thing that's like a fallacy to be aware of, just to like analyze it. You know, this turned into a bit of a fucking Freudian session between me and Zaboutine here. But anyway, so what do you call it? There's different, like, I don't know, like, I've always said it, there's, like, different forms of, like, choking, okay? There's, like, the Uzi-style choking, which is, like, the choking under expectations. As in, like, there's people who choke when they're the favourite all the time. And then there's other people who choke when they're, like, massive underdogs, and it's, like, the bright light, like, syndrome and stuff like that. There's also other people who, like, choke the same way, like, and they actually said this, like, Carrigan and Nico, where, like, they choke because of all the things that went wrong for them already, right? And we don't really know why Chovy chokes, because A, never told us, and B, none of his teammates have ever spoke about it. So it could literally be like any of these phenoms. So he's like talking about it because as if it's like the pressure of like being the Korean #1 seed, right? But that might not be it. It might just be like Chovy's sitting there and he's like, fuck. I've like lost this game before at Worlds. We're down in the series. Like, it could just be he's choking because it's specifically Worlds that's choking. We take like all these attributions and we spray can them over the course. But maybe it's just fucking like Chovy isn't actually just choking and he's just fucking. This is all an option, by the way. Chovy isn't choking. His performance just dips at Worlds every single time. He just happens to be bad there. Like, there isn't actually any emotion. Now, that would be rare, but it is like a fucking option. I don't know how it's like fucking possible, because the thing about those versions of like Gen.G is they were all like so good going into the tournaments, and they were also good like at the tournaments. And if you go back and you watch them all, the way they lose, it isn't always just like Chovy choke. Like 2024 World, Chovy plays brilliantly. Lehens chokes. Lehens dies 22 times in like 3 games. It's like, there's no way to control that. Then 2023 Worlds, Thorin chokes. Chovy isn't great, but like he's like serviceable. Like there's a complete menagerie of like different circumstances, and it's why like forward projecting for these like types of things. Now, obviously, the fan could say, well, the whole idea is for Chovy to just be so good, like Faker is. That's what the fan would say, that like these things don't matter. But that's not really how like Gen.G teams are like constructed. Gen.G teams are like quite close knit, like systemic, like scaling like units a lot of the time. And so like the big holes and like the big dips in performance kind of like break down like the Jenga blocks. And it can be quite like you have like quite catastrophic results. You know, you had that one final in LCK in 2024 where Gen.G looked unbelievable and Paves played like a little bit badly and Canyon played like a little bit badly. Next thing you know, HLE won the split. And obviously HLE were a good team, but like Gen.G looked unbeatable. So that's where I kind of like it gets high to me. I don't know how you can look at it in the sense of like, you know, it's going to make it easier because like Chovy's going to have no pressure, because who fucking knows? Maybe like Ruler and Canyon are just like, oh my god, it's ending my career. Fucking, if the last run is Gen.G, I play shit, and there's just nothing you can really do that. There's like so many factors that go into specifically winning Worlds. It's really hard.
I just want to add something. I think the reason Gen.G is not playing and not as dominant as last year is because, and I think everybody agrees, this is not that hot take to say that Canyon's games has worsened over the years. I know we are past the line of sometimes acceptable. Ruler plays as well, like he has been more and more inconsistent over time. These are players that have played for years and years and years. They're way closer to retirement than their peak. And that happens as well in any region. And I think that's mostly the reason the team is underperforming. It's just the players aren't as good as the way they did. So I feel like a closer, like if you didn't have to be the hot take, you would say Gen.G is not as dominant because their star players from jungle and ADC don't play as well. Therefore, they have even less chance to win at Worlds, right? That's a much more rational approach than saying, oh, their star player, their jungle and their ADC play worse. No, they have no expectation. Chauvy's going to solo kill Zeka 7 times in lane and they're just going to win the trophy. That sounds really far-fetched to me.
Okay, here's the problem. I definitely agree with the first thing you said. Like, people do this thing where they act like there's only 2 options. If you don't do the one that didn't work, then it must work. Like, that's not, like, as you're saying, like, by the way, I even agree if you apply that analysis to this. No, the reason why the chances were better in past years is they were a much better version of Gen.G. They're a worse version now. So yes, there's less pressure, but they're also less likely to win because they're worse. Like that is a very good reason to not win. And I'll even add in, they're worse. And in theory, especially if BLG never gets bin back, they're actually even worse in a world where it's a lot easier to win, I think, actually. Like, this is more wide open than past years. There isn't some super dominant team and you aren't it yourself. So, but here's the problem. I do think it's not a terrible take in the sense that they still can win worlds, even though they've done they didn't win first stand. They didn't even go to MSI and they might not even win LCK right now. In fact, as of today, they wouldn't win LCK, in my opinion. I actually think, believe it or not, D+ could win, or maybe it'll even be Animal Life if the right meta comes along. So I believe there's a world where they could win nothing and they can still win worlds. But actually, if anything, that is going to be in more keeping with all the bullshit past T1 teams than Gen.G. It's just the idea that you have the pieces, and if they just get their shit together at worlds after making worlds, anything can happen. I do think that's true. With that said, here's why I don't think it'll happen this year, unfortunately. The real reasons that have crippled Gen.G are really, really sad, which is, first of all, Canyon already was getting sort of carried for a few years now, and they've needed an actual jungler. If no one watches Modern League, Canyon, the old Canyon, would tear up this meta. He would be so sick. Now he just farms and fucking stays out the other guy's jungle. Like, he's not even Canyon in this team. And that you could get by with that in past years because you had all winning lanes. This year, you have times where you only have Chovy. That's it. Then also, they have leaned on Chovy so hard it's cruel. If anyone saw the game today, the HLE game, like, mate, this guy has to make all the plays. He has to make the faker players in game 1 arise. Then he has to just hard carry the game on the second game. And if he doesn't do that, they just lose 2-0 to Animal Life. Like, that's gonna make it. And I've seen this story before, where when you're at Worlds, it's not that Chovy has to choke, but if he just plays normal, you won't win. If you're relying, this happens with Zimu in Counter-Strike and fucking loads of players. If Donk in CS as well, right? If your player has to play 9 out of 10 for you to win, well then God forbid he ever has one day where the nerves get to him, or you just, he feels. By the way, what about the LPL angle? What if you just get fucking a flu one day or something like that, like a day before the quarters, like it's cooked? So the problem is they've been so fucking weak at ADC and I think jungle especially, and then even Keane has had a rare time. I wonder if it's because of the military at the end of the year. By the way, there's not any pressure. Keane probably has to retire at the end of this year, mate. Like, the pressure on him to win worlds is enormous. It's fucking huge. And I'm sorry, I don't care what you say. Chovy doesn't agree with you. To someone like Chovy, you're supposed to win every single year you play. He's still an amazing player. Like, he's not doing the Western thing of like, don't worry about Chovy. This year you don't win too. In his brain, like, if I show good games, you will chiff. It's that shit. Like, he really believes that he plays 10 out of 10, he'll win worlds. I think if you even watch Faker, hasn't Faker ruined everyone's career narrative? That now you're supposed to, when you're not in the best, be able to fuck around and win worlds. Like, it's actually put more pressure on all these Knight, Chovy, all those guys have way more pressure than they did before. Because back in the day, the old Faker just won when he was the best player. That made sense. That made sense why he won. The latter ones are going to torture everyone because we're going to expect, like, the joke is, I should be saying to Showmaker, you're having a brilliant bounce back here. No, based on what Faker did, why don't you win worlds, bro? Go on then. Go win worlds, poke him with a stick, do something. Win that second world. It's actually unfair though, isn't it? Only one person can do that. So I disagree. I don't think Gen.G's going to, and I definitely don't think it's easier. Like, I think it's actually way harder. I actually think the joke of this year is they could even be the team that fucks around and gets like either 4th seed or doesn't even get there. Look, I still think they'll beat KT, so I'm not worried about that. But they could go to worlds, and here's the thing, they could get grouped this time, boys. That could even happen. That's totally plausible. I even think there's the odd LPL team might be able to get them. Who knows? Maybe like fucking... Maybe Breather, anyone's legend, can steal a game off him in a thing, or some shit like Gen.G might be able to get a sneaky, cheeky win or something like that. Who knows? Right, I tell you what, Since we actually went a bit short, I will do a hot take. I've got one for you. I've got a really weird angle for you. Because I was thinking when you did the thing with captive and we put me in a different region, I'll tell you an example of where people take for granted that sometimes your background and your culture are essential to being who you are. So I'll give you an example. People always say in international football that one of the flaws we have in England with our England national team is we basically just revere people we think are geniuses and mavericks way too much. And if you're someone like Bellingham or Gerrard, we just go, oh, you're so do whatever you want. But if you have a look, one of the things that makes you win internationally is actually boring ass players like Rodri, who are just like the engine of the fucking team. And they do nothing sexy and they just side pass the ball 700 times. But you can't get the ball off them. They just control the game and they manage the game. Like that problem is that's not sexy. So in England, we would never take that player. The joke is we have them. It's people like Declan Rice. We just don't use them that way. We don't let him play that way because we go, listen, dickhead, fucking pass the ball forwards to these brilliant players and they're going to score a worldie. But that's actually not how you play. So similarly, here's my hot take. The Chinese AD carry, Uzi I, if he was actually born in Korea as a Korean player and everything about his personality and his style is the same, he's that brash, I fight over every creep, you play the game through me, you give me my picks every single time, I carry the whole game, you play around me in the team fight, raise the pop. I think he would genuinely have barely had anything close to a legendary career. I even think he's the sort of person, mate, the Korean coaches would slap down so fast in his development. And if you know anything about Korean League of Legends, it is extremely rare they will ever let just the ADC be the carry every game. Mate, Diablo tried this. He tried being the Korean Uzi and they fucked him off out the team and told him shut the fuck up. And he's been consigned to the sort of back end of the fucking league. Like, I think all that stuff can only exist in a world in China where they revere the carry. He's following Wei Xiao's roots. Also, they actually love kind of like fucking being macho in China. They love the idea that he fights and he's like, fuck you guys, I'm going to battle over every CS and when I win the game, it's me carrying the whole thing. Also, I'll just throw this in there. In LCK, bro, they make you play the fucking Kesper Cup, the off-season tournaments, the Red Bull lands. You don't get to go, I don't really feel like playing the first split. I'll see you guys after Chinese New Year. That's not even a thing, bro. By the way, they have Lunar New Year in Korea as well. You're fucking playing, mate. You're playing in the Kesper Cup, offline, everything. You ain't getting... So I actually don't think someone like Uzi I could be who he is there, mate. I've always thought, by the way, as a quick aside, it's even why the best Western players ever have that spark of genius. You don't get to be Hillsang and playing the fucking LCK. You don't get to be pick whoever you want, some stud fucking Soaz. Mate, Soaz would have the worst time of his life with Korean coaches telling him how to play. Just weak side, don't go. What are you doing this play for here? We didn't discuss that in the... Like, so essentially, I think Uzi I, he had to be Chinese to have this career. I think if he's the same guy and he can speak Korean, I think a fan would think he'd be better. He'd won all these worlds. I think they wouldn't let him be in the top teams. Or I think he'd have to play his whole career in like fucking... a Freak of Freaks or Fear X or some shit so that he could just be this weird carry and then everyone would be yeah, I'm not even being mean. I just think that's real. What do you think? Too hot?
That's typically the type of... go on, Keire.
No, it's funny because this player actually kind of existed. He's a really old player. He's a ADC player called Hermes. I had to look him up. He played in 2013. He played with Mad Life before Space Prison, right? And they chose to have Space Prison rather than this guy because he was like too resource heavy on Frost. Right. Because if you know how Frost works, basically, it was like the real actual person who was in charge of Frost was actually like Shy because he was the oldest. Then it was like Rapid Start, like it was the fucking ordering of the team made no fucking sense basically. And this guy was basically trying to be, I think he played Winter 2013, basically the forgotten LCK split, the one that Max won. And this guy basically tried to do like the Uzi thing. Like all honest, the split Lokodoku's played in the same split as him. And no, it did not fly. Like it just did not fucking fly. This guy like got like bapped out the team like so quickly. I think he was splitting, ended up at the actual mid-split, like kicked him out of the team. I can't remember what the exact story was with him. But he basically tried to do what was at this point Wei Xiao thing. Because if you don't know, at the very end of season 2, Wei Xiao was the best player in the world, and at the start of season 3, Wei Xiao was still the best player in the world. And this guy was trying to copy like that style along with Devil, i.e. Nami. And yeah, that guy got fucking high-buted. And it just didn't work. And then the problem was, and this is the trendsetter was, is all the other great ADC players were either like told what to do by their support player, i.e. Imp and Deft, because Heart and Mata literally just fucking told them what to do, or they were Prey, where they were subservient to their solo laners. And because that like trend just come through, it's the same way as like as what I call it, the Korean top lane bloodline project. It's like all the Korean tops are just a clone, an improved clone of each other as the derivatives like go down. And then the Korean ADCs basically like, you know what I mean, you've got Ruler and Viper, which was Deft and Imp, and then you had like you've got people that try and play like Prey, and the only one that was a little bit like Spicy and did have a kind of like me like thing about him was actually like Piglet. And him and like Pumandu used to like try and like fucking like push and play heavy from lane. But he was still subservient to Faker, and they did play that Faker pick style. And you go and look at all of Piglet's picks, it's like the Varus, the fucking Dash, the Ezreal, they're all played around like that poke pick like style. And so yeah, like who you are, like massively things. I actually don't think Uzi would have been good. And like, even though he's a great player, I don't think Uzi would have been good on those like Korean teams. I think the only teams he would have basically been an improvement on were like the desperate OGN teams that would like he was mercenary for, if you know what I mean, like in terms of just like winning. But yeah, it's like a bit of a shame to be honest, because I actually think loads of those like, and I think that's why loads of those Korean players end up having to go to the LPL to like craft that side of their play. Like the Viper that fucking played with Chove is not the fucking Viper that like
Pays.
Pays now. Oh, and like Death literally couldn't lane until he went to the LPL and literally taught himself.
By the way, on that football example, it's why I always often say the opposite side. I often say Spain wins all the international tournaments. Where's all their strikers? Where's the guys scoring the 30 goals? They don't have them. They don't use those. They don't. So in the same way, I don't think they make carry ADCs in Korea, bro. They don't.
Thoughts, Zaboutine? it's really the kind of, I really like these takes because they're like extremely cold for the educated eye of people who work in the scene, and extremely hard for the the mainstream audience because they are more, you know, like their opinions forged through narrative and broadcast. I would go even beyond.
I mean, I'm basically doing the like, could Messi do it on a cold, rainy day in Stoke? But in this case, it's like, could Uzi do it on like a real structured team with a proper coach in Busan when it's raining? Like, and the answer's no, apparently.
I even had a hard take. I think it was later last year when I said when they replaced Guma by Pays, T1 won Worlds. I don't know if you guys remember. It's beyond the Uzi case. I genuinely think that any team that bends to satisfy the needs of an ADC, and it's not the needs, the real needs, it's the perceived needs of an ADC that's centered around his own resources, is condemned to fail at the highest level. I genuinely think that over time has nothing to do with Uzi personally. It's just the way the game's played. It's you're always gonna be late if you follow the ADC, because ADC has the slowest tempo in the game. He has the highest cost to deliver damage and doesn't really provide any type of CC aside from utility. Yes, but if you go into that realm, you're already a utility ADC, right? You're already playing the Ashe, the Varus, you're already in the Guma realm playing the Senna. So if you're really a hard carry ADC and you play champion that does damage, your champion doesn't do anything on the map. So if you start just waiting, and then you have to sacrifice from solo lane that get the most XP and most golds, and then you have to sacrifice the roamings of the support, so you get less vision, you get less impact. You cannot prevent the enemy jungle from ganking because you don't know where he is. It's like, it's a whole domino effect from staying bot. You want the best example for the ones who don't watch Asian League of Legends, you take Upset. You go into any team Upset has been in. First, he arrives, so he has no authority within the team. So he just plays at the weak side ADC. He's the best player in the team. The team keeps doing what they were doing formerly. And then Upset arrives in the middle of the team fight and carries the team fight. Everybody looks at Upset, it's like, wow, this guy is pretty good. Then Upset starts talking during the review and say, guys, if you give me more resource, I'll carry. Then team stops playing around what they were formerly doing and starts playing around Upset. And then Razor suddenly becomes a dog that like dives bots on wave 3. And Bo was doing the same thing and the team implodes. And that isn't even because Upset, because people invent things around Upset. He's not a mean guy. He's a pretty professional. Everybody that's worked with him say that he's very nice to work with. It's just because the team starts believing that's the way to play, they start failing. And I genuinely think that if Uzi was a little bit more selfless, he might have won worlds somewhere else or in China. And it's even worse than that because he has killed the top laner culture, and they had to wait for 28 teams the shy to actually realize top laners can carry, because otherwise they were just the destiny of a top laner was my bot laner has made a bad trade, TP in the middle of the lane every single time. Cora 1,
if you remember,
369.
Let Me was the one that was on his team at the end. Remember that guy? His job was weak side 24/7, bro. 24/7.
The only guy that was playing crazy things back then was Flandre, right, in Snaky Sports, and I mean, he still delivers to this day. But
my man.
I really think like this is first for me. It's a very cold take. I would double down on that, and I triple down because I say, and I still mean it. T1 won't win worlds this year because they have pace. Who is the best ADC in the world? And they have the best bot lane in the world.
Yeah, agreed.
Zach.
Okay. Anyway, if you are not a subscriber, that's where this show will end. We'll be back for another episode. If you are a subscriber, obviously pick us as the Hot Take Show. We will now do a little Q&A.